Hello, everybody. We are live on Hump Day. So it once again is extremely hot. I feel like my shirt represents how hot it is here in my office. But it's definitely been a good day. Been very productive here in my office today. So that's always a good thing. Let's see. See if we can get him on, and then we will go ahead and get started. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you see me at all?
Yes. Can
All
you
right,
see me?
cool. Yep.
Perfect. It's like boiling up in here, but I'll survive. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just kind of trying to get over the birthday weekend, so I'm still slightly recovering.
Yeah. I had a pretty good birthday at the beginning of September. Got to celebrate even though it's a pandemic.
Oh yeah,
What kind of things
I
did you
agree.
do?
We had a heels and wigs party, so we got a few of us together. We all just had on crazy outfits, heels and wigs. A couple of my friends who were actually drag queens performed. We had lip sync battles and
Uh,
just, random fun.
that sounds like a lot of fun. I used to do a lot of like dress up themed parties back in college, and I miss those so much.
Never had any opportunity to do that in college. I was an athlete, so for me, my birthday was okay, happy birthday, and get in the water and swim.
Yeah, we are actually having a Halloween party this weekend, so I'm excited. So,
That'll be fun.
actually, still get to dress up for the holidays, even though the pandemic has kind of ruined the whole getting together in large groups. So, we're doing
Hmm.
a small Halloween party with people that we kind of see all the time anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I will go ahead and let you introduce yourself so that the people watching know who you are, and then we can just jump into a discussion.
All right. Well, I am Dwight. I live in Chicago. I just turned 32. My profession is I am a male model internationally, and I also bartend downtown as well. And I'm the head bartender at my restaurant.
Perfect. So I remember towards the beginning, or I guess the middle of this pandemic, you kind of did something similar to this with someone else on, I think it was
Mhm.
Instagram. I think you
Yeah, it
kind
was
of talked
during the
about it.
whole like all the protests when they were going on right after George Floyd had passed away. And my friend and I, we've been friends for about I knew him before I moved to Chicago, and we always joke around with each other. Like we'll say little stupid things, and sometimes he would say things that now if you say it, it'd be like, oh, you can't say it. That's kind of racist. But for me, I see it as he's my brother. Like I don't see anything wrong with it. And I remember he just came up to me one day right when we started opening things in Chicago, and he was just like, "I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." Which I was like, you never hurt me in any way. Like I know what you were trying to say, but I get why you're apologizing. And he was like, I really want to make it up. He's like, let's go ahead and do like, an Instagram live. I know we've talked about, subliminal racism in the past. Maybe we can talk about it on my channel. So that's how that all came up.
Yeah, I feel like because a lot of YouTubers have been dealing with like the cancel culture of like what's going on in 2020 and things that they had posted in the past that I don't believe they were meant to cause any harm, but it was definitely not very. It wasn't. They weren't very aware of how it could affect people in a negative way. Like people that know you personally, you might just say, "Oh, they're joking," but people who don't really know you, it can come off really racist, homophobic,
Mhm.
sexist, whatever
And
it
I've
is.
had the worst of the worst. I've had the worst of the worst happen to me. So for me, little things like that, for me, I just was like, oh, they're just joking. I don't really see it as it could be. But obviously, for other people, it could be a completely different situation. So,
Yeah, most definitely. I've definitely, I'm the type of person that I don't get offended too quickly when it comes to like the homophobic jokes that people say. Like, I can watch Family Guy and pretty much laugh at any gay joke that they make on that show. And most of my close friends, I would say that at this point in my life, I can kind of laugh it off. But I've started to realize that when it comes to those types of jokes, It can be taken too far, and it's a very, very fine line.
Mm-hmm.
And I've started to realize that, yes, now that I am very confident in who I am and I'm very like accepting of who I am as a person, that stuff doesn't hurt as much. But when it comes to people who are still on their beginning of their journey, that can be really like detrimental to their growth and acceptance of themselves. So I've become a little bit more like, hey, let's not do that kind of joking at all. Like, it doesn't really affect me. It's not going to ruin my day, but it could really impact someone else's.
Yeah. To each your own, I guess, basically. Everyone, has different ways on how they handle situations. I mean, like I said, for me, the worst happened all the way down in high school. So it was, oh, hold on, my phone's still on. 1 second. There you go. Yeah, it was just like, I mean, I had a dad for a Marine sergeant. I played sports my entire life. So I've always had people saying, like, okay, just suck it up and just get over it. So that's why, like, now the older I got, I was like, okay, I really just don't care. Like, I mean, I'm more of a, as long as you don't physically touch me, then we're good to go. You can say what you want about me, but don't talk about my friends and don't touch me, or else then we'll have some problems.
Yeah, I can imagine. So today's like discussion is kind of wrapping around the idea of coming to acceptance of yourself and loving yourself fully. I
Mhm.
personally, that's been quite a long journey for me, especially when it came to having a very religious background and something that I still am very close to. I didn't give that up when I came out. So my journey to acceptance was a very long one. It was very confusing and it was hard internally and externally. And it's something that I still, I would say, externally deal with on a regular basis. But internally, I feel like I've kind of had that part settle down. I kind of learned that I don't need to have anyone else's approval to be myself and what I believe is right. So that's kind of helped me. But how does your path kind of look when it came to like self acceptance, especially like when it comes to being a model? I know that in that field, there's a lot of things that people kind of point out and look at. And when it
Oh
comes
yeah.
to looks, that is something that is usually like in everyday world is something that people struggle with on a regular basis.
Especially the gay world, honestly, because I mean, people can say what they want about, oh, I don't. It's like we all judge Mary, every single one of us, including me. So, I guess for me, when I started self-accepting, I guess for me it was sports when I really started like getting to understand myself better. Because I mean, my entire family were all athletes. Like my dad was a football player and a wrestler. Both my brothers did basketball, baseball, and football. My mom was a star track and field runner, and she was also a softball player. And for me, I feel like the black sheep in the family because I couldn't seem to find a sport for the longest time growing up. It wasn't until I was 15 when finally I had a friend. I did like summer league swimming, like the summer neighborhood pool, which wasn't anything serious. It was just, oh, just practice for 20 minutes. We'll splash around, have a meet, once a week in the summertime. And finally, my one friend was like, you should join like my, year-round team program. Like, you'll be a lot faster and we can use, we can finally beat this one summer team and everything else. And what started as just like a little joke of like, oh, it gives me something to do in the daytime during school year turned into, oh, I actually am getting much better at this. So I think for me, once I started getting more confident in my swimming abilities, I kind of then started noticing that I had became more confident as a person. So I wasn't like that shy, quiet kid anymore. And I ended up getting more of my own personality. I got more confident with things. And I think the better at that sport I got and the more hard work I started putting in, that's when I really was like, okay, like if I can start doing stuff like this now, then I can almost do anything. So obviously, by the time I was a senior in high school, I had lots of colleges calling me saying, "Hey, we have scholarship money for you." Like, and my one coach, I never understood what he meant by you really need to get good at the sport if you want to continue this in college because you're a college coach's dream. And I was kind of like, well, for what? He said, well, first of all, it shows that school that you have diversity on the swim team because let's be honest, black people don't really swim. So if you can go to a school that's predominantly white, they're going to have a lot more money for you personally because many schools want to show, hey, we have diversity. Look, we have people of color who are doing sports that aren't, stereotypical, essentially. And my coach also said, also you're a kid that started out very late and you're already improving this much. Because for a while, I was like, I think I would probably say when I was a senior in high school, that's when my coach had told me why he said I would be a success in college for swimming. And I think that's when I started self-accepting a lot more because I have friends that are way faster than me. They've been swimming since they were 4 years old, 5 years old, whatever. I didn't start till I was 14, 15. And I was just kind of like, why are these schools looking at me? And he goes, everyone else on this team has bad habits. They have habits they've had for years. They can't break that so easily. You don't have habits, meaning that whoever accepts you into that college, he can mold you any way he wants to. And sure enough, the school I went to, my coach always was harder on me in certain situations, which I was kind of like, why is that? And then once I started learning, I was like, oh, like he's teaching me how I should be doing this. So for me, I think my self acceptance was all about swimming. And like I said, having a dad from Marine Sergeant who was always hard on me, and having coaches my entire life who were always hard on me, I always, I guess to a sense, like when things came to like negative feelings or whatever, I was able to push that back easier. I think because of sports. So I think once sports happened, of course, I went from 35, 140 at 6 feet tall in high school and jumped to like 215 pounds after college. So of course, once you go from like being a skinny little, scrawny kid to this muscular guy, and to where even my mom was like, "Is that my son?" My dad's like, "No, that's your son." My mom's like, "No, Dwight's not that muscular," and he's like, "No, like Dwight's a man now. He's not that skinny little kid anymore." So obviously, I think gaining all that muscle and fine, being like, "Oh, like I've got, like I got tits finally, I got biceps, I got a booty now." So I think for me, it was like the sports, and I think the physical appearance is kind of what helped me get that slowly start accepting things a little more and more.
Yeah, most definitely. So when it came to, because when it comes to sports and when it comes to like the body physique and everything, that has to do a lot with like masculinity and stuff. And when it comes to like the gay community, a lot of times like you see people that are very much seeking that masculine look.
Mm.
But when it comes to the LGBT community, there's still a lot of people who are very insecure when it comes to being feminine, because it's almost as if like that is looked at as a negative trait. How is
Hmm.
that something that you've kind of like dealt with or seen in the gay community?
So definitely for me, I remember my first, experimented being part of that community. I remember just being like, okay, well, if I'm going to be gay, I have to be a man about it. So I can't be like, hey girl, as I call it, the broken wrist syndrome. I always was just seeing, I always had this mindset of, okay, like I can't be this way because I didn't accept myself at first for being gay. I think coming from a Southern family in the South, that's a very religious family as well. It's like you cannot be black and you cannot be gay at the same time. Like it needs to be one or the other. Be gay and not black, or be black and not gay. So I think I always and I had two younger brothers too. So of course, my mindset, my dad and parents are always, well, you're the ringleader. You're the one that's going to lead our kids, our sons together, and everything else. And it's kind of like, this pressure now. Like I don't know what to do. I can't tell my parents I'm gay. So I would say the first few years, I had the confidence physically, but as far as mentally, I was definitely not there yet. So it's kind of okay. Like I got the physicality, so I can kind of, maybe get through all this stuff. And I think once I moved to Indianapolis, I like I definitely didn't do anything while I was in the South. I was like, people know who I am. I don't want to do any experiments or whatever. And then when I moved to Indiana, it was kind of like, okay, well, I don't know anyone, so maybe if I just try something out. And I remember going to my first gay bar and just being like, what the fuck is happening? Like, there's these guys in crop tops, and like guys are making out with guys, and there's drag queens. Like, I'd never seen a drag. I didn't even know what a drag queen was, honestly, until that day. And I was just like, what is going on here? And a part of me was like excited about it, but at the same time, a part of me was like, no, you cannot like this. You cannot like this. As time goes on, I would say it was probably a good like 3-ish years or so when it's like, okay, like I'm definitely gay, but how do I tell my family? And I can't even make this story up. My granddad actually convinced me to come out of the closet because I was living with him for a little bit at his condo, and I was going to do my promiscuous phase at that time, which I probably shouldn't have living with my grandfather. But my granddad was probably like 81, 82 years old, and he's hard of hearing. So, but he would always take his hearing aids out at nighttime. But I remember he came up to me one day, and he was just getting coffee. I think that I was maybe getting ready for work or something, and he was just like, "So you know your dad's coming to town soon?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, we're getting dinner still, right?" He's like, "Yeah. By the way, we're gonna tell him that you're gay." And I kind of was like, "Me, gay?" And my grand just stops me and just goes, "Son, you don't bring this many you guys over, saying that you guys are gonna go out, and then they spend the night because they were too drunk to drive home, and all of a sudden the next morning they're walking around in your gym clothes." So let me just say one thing: my best friend of 65 years is gay. I know the signs. He did the exact same thing. It's okay. I don't care. Just be honest with yourself because you can't be in love with yourself or happy with yourself until you finally are honest with yourself. That mirror just was like, okay, I can't hide this charade anymore. Okay, fine. What are we going to do about this then? He's like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to the nicest restaurant in Indiana. We're going to get a steak and lobster dinner, get a nice bottle of wine. We'll get some Camos. We'll do like Chimney Rock, whichever one you want. We'll get your dad slightly tipsy, just a little bit. And then once he gets to the very end, we're going to go ahead and tell him. And so, like I said, my dad's a Marine Sergeant. My dad still to this day has a better body than me. He still has six-pack abs in his 60s and still has huge biceps. And the man knows how to fight. I mean, he's whooped my ass plenty of times. I know what the man can do. So I'm like, okay, there's three options that are going to happen. He's either going to accept that I'm gay and we'll be good. He won't accept it and he'll pull out the Bible and start lecturing me, which I can live with that. Or he's going to jump across that table and kick my ass. Like, one of those three is going to happen. So we get to the day of the dinner, and things are fine. Like, we're catching up. My dad's asking, "Oh, congrats on like that Calvin Klein campaign you did. I'm proud of you." Da 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 da. And I'm thinking, "Oh dear God!" Like, he's just making this harder and harder because we didn't have a horrible relationship growing up. It was one of those. I always was one way. He was always a certain different way. So it was kind of like, well, you're my dad. I'm your son. You respect me. I'll respect you, and we won't step on each other's toes. And I would say that once I graduated high school, and then I think when the swimming really kind of got more serious, and I was always qualified for NCAA's, I won 5 national titles in college, had a couple of All-American records. That's when my dad was kind of like, okay, like he's not kidding or he's a man. So we finally had like that father-son bond. And my mind's just like, I do not want to get rid of this father-son bond. Like it took us years to get here finally, and now we have it. So I finally was just like, okay, well, Dad, I need to tell you something. Because my grandma was kind of like giving the face of like, all right, come on, like,
Stop.
you need to say something. So I'm kind of just like, okay, fuck, all right, I'm going to say this. And I was like, Dad, like, I just have to tell you something that I like guys. And so my dad's like, okay, well, here, let me just pull up my Bible. I was like, okay, cool. He's getting the Bible. He's not going crazy. I was like, seriously, give me another bottle of wine because this is going to be a long conversation. And he ended up finding a verse that said that love was universal. And I remember just being like, I remember my granddad were just like, wait, what'd you say? And he was like, son, he's like, your mom and I have always had this discussion since you were little. We always kind of knew. But my dad, when I was younger, said, well, he's gay. He's like, I'll just beat the shit out of him one day and just do this. And he won't be my son. And I remember my mom was just always like, like, that's going to be your child and you're going to love your son no matter what. And my dad said, well, not if he's gay because that's not the Christian thing to do. And da 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 da. And then my parents divorced, I want to say, when I was a senior in college. And so it's almost like my dad started seeing things differently. And he didn't have the same mindset that he had when he was with my mom. Because the church we were at was like not a good church at all. And that, I mean, we can go on about that story. My mom and I had a long discussion about that. But it's almost like once my dad left that church finally and found a different church that was a lot more accepting, it's almost like he did a complete 360. So when he started saying that, we started talking, and of course, being the son of a Marine Sergeant, as much as I wanted to try to cry, I was like, I can't cry in front of my dad because he's gonna be like, okay, like, don't get mushy on me right now. But we had like a long talk for like another 3 hours basically, and it was almost like that was like him saying, "It's okay. I give you my blessing to go ahead and be gay and be fabulous." And ever since then, that's when I just accepted everything. That's when I started, that's when my friends put me in drag for the first time, maybe the year after. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen my Instagram of like, me, actually performing in drag and stuff like that. Like, it's almost like that was the moment when I finally was like, I can be who I want to be now. And there's nothing holding me back anymore. That was the one thing I think that always held me back was being a disappointment to my mom, my dad. My mom, I didn't care. I literally called my mom the next day and just said, "Hey, mom, I'm gay." She's like, "What? I'm at a football game, honey. I'll call you back later. But congratulations, love you." Hung up the phone. That's how my mom went. I knew my mom was going to care, but my dad was the one that I was kind of like, I just don't want to be a disappointment. And the moment he said that he was fine with everything, then that's when everything was like, okay, let's get the sprinkles, let's get the rainbows, the unicorns, and the high heels, and let's go.
Yeah, I definitely think that when it comes to coming out, like a lot of people, it is the family and their close friends and their church relationships that they really don't want to lose. I know that when it came to a lot of people that I've talked to, that's something that kind of holds everyone in the closet. That's almost like what's holding that door shut because
Mm-hmm.
you do see stories that go horribly wrong, and especially when you grow up, and I'm sure you probably heard things just like I did here in the South where like you kind of heard the disapproval of LGBT people, and you kind of that was your expected response when it's like, okay, here it comes, but I've got to do
Mm-hmm.
this. And
Yeah, because I think there was one time I wanted to come out earlier, and I remember one of our friends in college was like, "Yeah, did you hear about so and so?" And I was like, "Oh, like what happened?" They go, "Well, apparently he's gay. He came out to his family, and his family was just so horrible to him and like physically and mentally tortured that poor kid that he finally committed suicide." And for me, I was like, "Oh God, like what if that happens to me then? Like, I don't want to be. I mean, I would. I don't think I would ever do anything that extreme, but it's just like I can see my dad, getting physical, and I don't want to get physical with my own dad because one, like I said, even though he might be older than me, he's shorter than me. Like he will still kick my ass. So it's like I don't have to get to a point where I will never have a dad anymore. So I think for about a good, I want to say maybe because I think I came out when I was either 25 or 26. So for me, it was just kind of like God, like I don't want that happening anytime soon. So I think I was just so terrified about that situation ever happening, going wrong and south. I just kind of always kept telling myself like, oh, well, I'm not really gay. I'm bisexual, and I would have so many friends that would just be like, okay, Dwight, as you go home with, that boy tonight, and be like, oh no, I went. I was like, okay, I'm sure you went home with the girl that one night, but you're still going home with the guy right now.
yeah. So one thing that I've noticed, and this is something that I kind of took from this year as well, is just like societal norms, things that like society tells you. And
Hmm.
I moved back here to Virginia after living in very large cities. I actually lived in Chicago for a little bit, and it was a very different experience being gay in a city where people either didn't care or they just fully accepted you and you were just another person to them. You weren't anything like crazy. But when I moved back, I realized that even within the LGBT community here in rural Virginia, a lot of people, it's almost like society tells you LGBT is bad, and the
Hmm.
LGBT people actually believe that they are bad. And then some of them believe that the community as a whole is bad, but if you stick to your Christian values, if you are a good person that only goes into a relationship and doesn't hook up, that somehow you are a better gay than the community that is so toxic and disgusting to the rural conservative Christian people. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people kind of have to battle with when it comes to self-acceptance is what we
Hmm.
are taught to think about ourselves and what we are taught to think about our community. Because I know personally that it took me moving away from this area to meet people that loved me and didn't make me feel disgusting. Because I wasn't going around like hooking up with people. I did have one boyfriend for the first 2 years, and then I jumped into another long-term relationship after that. And for me, part of coming to acceptance and loving myself was unlearning what society taught me was the gay community. I felt like I was better than the gay community because I didn't participate in the stereotypical things that everyone said the gay community was doing that made them so bad. Uh, and
Mm,
I mean, even with like 2020, I think that this was kind of what um, made me realize it, that society is built to think a certain way. And even people within the community that it's negatively impacting, it's still impacting the way that they think of a community as a whole. And that's one of the things that I noticed in like the Black Lives Matter movement is the structure that we were born into. That's what we've kind of got to change. It's not just people's minds. It's not just learning to accept ourselves and realize that the limitations that people put on us is they're not really there. Those things
yeah.
don't really stop us from doing anything, but society definitely puts those types of things in our minds to where we do kind of have to break through those to find self-love and self-acceptance.
Hmm. No, I definitely agree with that because, like I said, with like, I'm gonna be back in one quick second because I feel like I need some wine. Just continue this conversation. I'll be back in 2 seconds. But also, there's someone from Afghanistan watching. We can give him a shout out.
Yes, I am definitely excited. There's a lot of people here that actually are watching from other countries, and a lot of people have messaged me about uh, dealing with the oppression of LGBT rights and people in other countries. And I've definitely been talking to a lot of people about how you kind of have to navigate through that because we've got to we've got to fight the fight. We just have to fight the fight where the people fighting have to survive. We can't we have to
Mhm.
do it smart. We have to understand that what we're doing here in America only works here in America because of the structure that we live in other countries, it is a lot harder to do that type of stuff. I've suggested to a lot of people where you can work really hard to find a way out of your current situation, educate people all over the world about your situation, and get more people on board to help you. Because, I mean, if you look at the history of LGBT in the United States, like, that's where we started as well. We started where it was very, very hard to be gay. It was very, very
Mhm.
dangerous. And we've definitely come a long way. And I think there are other countries that are right on par with us in that way. But
And I think there's a lot of people here in this country that need to realize that we are very blessed and very fortunate in this country that in most areas of our country we can be gay, be proud. I mean, I'm just sure there's those little tiny areas where it's like absolutely not, but for the most part, I mean, like in Chicago, like there's a huge gay population out here. I mean, when I go to LA and New York and those cities, like there's such a huge like I sometimes feel like it's sometimes Chicago, like whenever I'm like bartending downtown, I feel like I'm like, oh, like I know them. I think there's more gays than straight sometimes. I know it's not the case, but it just feels that way sometimes we go to certain areas. And there are certain countries where it's like you always have to hide who you truly are. Like you can like not have any kind of sign that you are even possibly a little slightly gay, or else that can be death, that can be imprisonment. And I think a lot of the younger gays are spoiled, like how a lot of people are spoiled with technology now. It's like, you know, I mean, with what we have now today, it's like we're very spoiled. But I was like, I wish that some people could just be like, listen, just put yourself in a different perspective just for a day if you can, and just know how blessed you are right now. I mean, I don't know what I'm trying to say right now, but I think that a lot of people need to kind of just reflect and just be like, you know what, just be thankful for what you have right now in this country. It's not perfect, but it's way better than some other places right now.
yeah, I definitely think that when it comes to my perspectives that I've had, just kind of living in different areas and speaking to people from different countries, I was going to go into the Peace Corps, and the first place I got assigned was actually Ghana. And when I looked up like Ghana and just was kind of doing my research, I saw that it was punishable by like imprisonment if you were gay. And I was like, okay, well, if
Mm-hmm.
I went, like I was definitely not going to like wear pride shirts, and I'm not going to like make out with a guy. But it scared me to think that, okay, what if it's just like my mannerisms? What if like my social media, which screams LGBT, like what if that's discovered? And I was talking to the recruiter and I was just like, how protected would I be? And they're like, well, I mean, over there, you would be subject to the laws of that country. And I was like, you know what? I would love to go make some positive change in the world, but I am
Hmm.
not doing 50 years in prison for being gay when I could
Yeah.
stay here in the United States and make just as much of a difference and not run into that issue. So it's definitely something that I think the LGBT people need to realize, that there are people that are in very, very bad situations, and we should be thankful for this. I mean, even from when I came out 12 years ago now, the LGBT community, I see so many people coming out and being disrespectful to people in the older LGBT community. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, these people like were out and about and fighting for your rights so that you can post on TikTok and Instagram that you're gay and you can kiss your boyfriend and be safe doing it. And I was like, you've got to really start to kind of educate yourself and really respect the history of the LGBT community, because we have come a long way. Like,
Yeah.
it's, I think I've seen a lot of people get upset about like the pronouns being misused, and a lot of times it's just simple mistakes. I
Hmm.
saw in a college where, here in Virginia, where a professor was like, when all you ladies find your future husbands and all you men find your wives, and someone freaked out that they were using like the pronouns in the sense of boy with girl and vice versa. And I was like, you have to realize that we are still living in a very heteronormative world, and it's going to take you being understanding and you explaining instead of blowing up and getting upset about
Hmm.
things, because change can only come when you take the time to educate people. If you blow up at them and get people fired or whatever you feel like doing, it's not positive, like constructive forward movement anymore. It's, you're just destroying people's lives, and it's going to make people not like you and the community and the whole idea of progressing for the LGBT.
And they were really on the fence with us and be like, oh, they're really like on our side now because you just attacked them. Like, I had a situation, I want to say maybe in June, when a bunch of us, it was like right when they opened the lakes again and everything else. And so, of course, a lot of us gays were like, okay, let's go play some volleyball, let's go listen to some music and just go jump in the water. And I think one of our friends was having a little get together afterwards, like just some pizza, some drinks, just hanging out. And I was walking with my friend B, who's a trans woman, and her and I had our mask on while we were walking. And my one friend Dave was just kind of like, "Well, why don't you guys have your mask on? You didn't have your mask on over there." And I said, "Well, I'm black and she's trans." But then she kind of turned around. She said, "Hey, you know what? Let's just pause time out real quick." She's like, "The correct way is actually I'm a trans woman, and technically, Dwight, you're not just black. You're a black man." And we were just trying to explain to him that, hey, you know what? Like, B's a trans woman. I'm a black man. you know, last thing we need is any more attention on us right now. We're going through a pandemic. There's this virus going around. So, out of respect, I would at least want to make sure I have my mask on because, no offense, I don't want someone who's Caucasian or light skinned being like, oh, well, why aren't you wearing your mask right now? And this virus is going around. I just don't need any little reasons for anyone to give me any more attention already. And my friend was like, I didn't think of it that way. But my friend B could just been like, you know what? That's not what you're supposed to say. She just was like, hey, you know what? Actually, you're actually a black man. You're not just black. Like, yeah, that's the color of your skin, but that doesn't define who you are as a person. You are a black man, as I'm a trans woman. And it's things like that when people need you just see, just educate. Don't need to snap and don't need to scream and yell and make a scene. Just simply say, hey, you know what? Like, I do agree with you, but this is actually the proper way to say it. And I guarantee you that it'll be a much better response than you would think. And if they don't have a good response, then you know what? They're not worth the time. You tried.
Yeah, most definitely. So you actually touched on something that I kind of talked to my friend Lance and other friends in the community, where they kind of talked about when it came to white people versus people of other minorities. There are
Mm-hmm.
things where it almost seems like if a white person screws up, it's that white person screwed up. When it comes to someone of a minority status, it's you represent the entire community. So when you mess up, it's that community is completely labeled as someone. And honestly, like, I think that when it comes to like age as well, that's one of the things that crosses my mind when I'm going out and putting my mask on, because I feel like people are going to assume that I'm a young person that doesn't care about getting old people sick. So I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
mask on. I don't want people thinking that I'm just some young, dumb person walking around not caring. So, like, how have you kind of navigated through that? Because I think that that kind of comes with a whole new level of learning how to navigate and accept yourself in a world.
I think honestly, between is one thing is that my parents have raised me well, and they taught me a lot of things. I mean, during the riots, I can't make this up. I remember walking. I think I was walking to a friend's house. I think that I had like my three quarantine buddies, and so like it was maybe in like right during the riot, like all the riots really started happening after George Floyd's death. I think I was just walking to my friend's place, and him and I were gonna go grocery shopping, then drive to our friend's house, who was a little bit further away. And I remember there are these two white ladies that are walking towards me, and I kind of like moved away so I wasn't, in their way, and they immediately like ran away from me. And there was no one else near the street by me, but first thing I thought of was they were probably thinking, okay, there's all these protests going on, there's all this looting going on. Oh, it's another black person, we gotta get away from him before he does anything. And for me, I was like, listen, honey, it's like I'm literally wearing like my Gucci shoes right now. I'm wearing my designer clothes. Like I'm looking cute. I am the last person you gotta worry about right now. Like I'm the least confrontation person. If anything, I'll probably just wave hi and keep on walking. But as I tell a lot of my white friends, they see skin first. They don't see the person who I am or whatever. It doesn't matter. I could have on the most expensive designer outfit on that could cost you millions. They will always see skin first. And that's part of like self accepting. I know that there's going to be hard times for me no matter what happens. My parents told me at 14, you're a black man, get ready, because you're going to have a lot of trials and tribulations that's going to happen to you. And they could have been the parents that been like, you know what, like it's, a systematic's fault and da 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 da. My parents just told me, just be ready. Like we're going to raise you and teach you things that will help you through, but you're going to have to do a lot of this on your own. So I think having my parents just kind of helped me be aware, but not like blaming the system or saying, well, it's not your fault. It's never your fault. I mean, no, for the most part, it's never my fault, honestly. Um, and I even remember feeling like sometimes whenever I'd be at the store and I would get like people looking at me kind of like, oh, there's a black guy. It's kind of like, girl, listen. I know that there are a lot of black people looting and doing a bunch of stupid shit right now, but don't just assume because I'm also black does not mean that I'm part of that group. If anything, I'm always the one that's like, please, people, let's not loot. Because first of all, you're messing with my money at my bar downtown and my modeling, so therefore I can't go and do photo shoots because nobody wants to go out and do photography sessions or anything like that. So it's hurting me as well. It's not just hurting you guys; it hurts everybody. So I think having my parents teaching me at a very early age and just making me self-aware about things, it kind of wasn't a thing for me to be like, oh, why is this happening? It's kind of like, I know this is going to happen, and I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, unless things somehow miraculously change, which in my mind, I think it's never going to happen in my lifetime, to be honest. And it's a hard reality to think about, but, it's just, like I said, I've been taught this since I was 14 years old. My parents were very, specific as to what could happen, as a lot of my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, like, they've all been very, patient, diligent, and teach me the ways, essentially, on what to look out for and how to not be ever disrespectful. Like, whenever my mom and dad taught me while I was learning how to drive, what do you do when you get pulled over by a cop who's white? And I said, okay, my driver's license plate is, right here. This is right here in my side pocket. And immediately put your hands on the steering wheel. That way, it's not like I'm trying to fumble around and get everything. Like, everything's in a specific spot in my car. That way, if he's there, he has no excuse of, oh, when he was reaching out, I was like, no, honey, like, my stuff's right here. And there you go. Give it one hand. There you go.
Yeah, I've definitely talked to a lot of my friends, and it's crazy how young you guys were like taught things that people in the white community were never told. And it's something that, I mean, I'm learning as an adult of the different things that you guys have had to do as a community that shouldn't have to be done. Um, I know that one of the things I was talking to one of my friends about was just um, the Black Lives Matter movement has taken the forefront for like a really large platform this year, which is amazing. I think
Mhm.
that a lot of things are going to be changing because of it. But I think
I
that
agree.
also it's putting a new strain on your community as a whole. It's almost like when I talk to people about LGBT things, like you can't just be LGBT. LGBT is a political movement now. It's something that just because I'm gay, I'm part of a movement because me seeking acceptance and me trying to get people to understand why my rights should be voted in the Supreme Court to be equal to everyone else's. I feel like even your community now, and I think that when it comes to the Black community with so much focus on Black Lives Matter in 2020, I know that a
Mhm.
lot of my friends have been like before they said that they felt like they almost found a normal, and this movement has kind of stirred that normal up to where a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of really intense thoughts are kind of starting to cross their head because now you've got 1,000 friends reaching out to you and asking you to help them understand, or they're sending out
Mhm.
their, like, just like you were saying, sending out the I'm sorry, like I said that type messages. And it's almost like you can't um, just have a normal conversation. That's one of the things I noticed when I moved here was that I was gay. And every conversation that the straight Christian people were having with me was the fact that I was gay. They're like, "Oh, did you
Mhm.
hear about the gay that was killed in Minnesota?" I'm like, "No, I don't have gay news on my phone. I don't get notified every time like something happens to a gay." But how has that kind of impacted you in 2020?
Nothing really, to be honest. I mean, I have friends who I would say like my close friends are the ones who I've had conversations with, like the guy who I did the interview with. Because there would be times where I would come to his house, pre-pandemic, and the first thing he would say would be, "Oh my God, we have diversity finally. Dwight's here, the black guy's here." So of course, to me, it's like, I mean, yes, it is true because I'm usually the only black guy that's here, but and he would say something, or we'd be like, I'm sure since you've been to Chicago, I'm sure you know what hydrate is. We'd be in those little areas, and he would be like, "Oh my God, Dwight, couldn't find you because you're so dark in here and it's so dark in this area." And he'd be like, "Oh my God, yes, let me just go ahead and smile, and then you can finally see my white tee." But it things like that, like I said, for me, like I've been joking like that with my friends for years now, but I'm also learning that I need to learn to be a little bit more understanding that some people just will not go for that, and maybe I don't know. As far as like I guess those conversations go, I've had some friends that have said, "Hey, we're sorry," or "Hey, what's it like?" But I really haven't had much discussion like that though. Um, I usually just tell a lot of my friends, like, maybe ask someone who that's a little older than me because they can tell you a lot more than I could. Like if I don't know a question, like I usually ask my parents or ask like my uncle or my cousins and my godfather normally because as I said in my interview, like I don't know all the questions. Like I'm not going to know even half the questions you guys ask me. So I mean, that's when I kind of have to, go to people who I know that might know a little bit more than I do. And sometimes they don't even know the answer. So I really wouldn't say anything's changed as far as conversations go in 2020. I would say like maybe my close friends. We've had discussions and talks about certain things, but nothing too out of the ordinary, honestly.
That's awesome. So, I guess when it comes to, I think like city life in general is because it's a much more like diverse
Mm-hmm.
population already. I feel like people have kind of learned to accept each other's differences, and
Educate
it's
yourself a little bit more, I think.
yeah, it's
I think
almost
there's slightly. I'm not saying that not everyone's educated, but I think that being in a much bigger city, especially like in Chicago, where there's lots of gays, there's lots of minorities. I think people are a little bit more aware about certain things. So maybe that's one reason why I didn't have as much conversation. So.
yeah. I think like here one thing that I noticed was like I've got a lot of very supportive friends when it comes to me being part of the LGBT community. And I've always been very thankful for it because you see so many like very conservative areas. Um, you hear the opinions of people and you sit through church sermons where they're talking negatively of LGBT. And I struggled with I thought I had some very open-minded people as friends, and I started
Mhm.
to see how extremely racist I like a lot of my friends were, and it's almost like I thought that because they were open-minded to me being LGBT, that they would also be open-minded to anything else where there was an injustice or inequality. But once again, like here in rural Virginia, where people are still waving their Confederate flags, where the Trump signs are like probably 80% of the signs that are up for this election.
And honey, I grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia, my whole life, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Colonial.
Hmm. A rich area where we were the only black family in my area at the time,
Yeah.
or at least one of the few. So,
Yeah. I feel like when it comes to that type of stuff, it is important to educate those people, but it's also you have to realize that there's some people that you're not the person to deliver that message. Their minds are going to be closed. You don't have that key to open that. And I've just kind of been shocked by a lot of people. It definitely has shown me who my real supportive like friends are.
mhm.
Like I've had a lot of really hard conversations. A lot of them were me having like me not understanding something or me having to learn something because I grew up where my mom told me like everyone's equal, and I've always fought for everyone to be equal. Anytime I saw someone being a bully to someone, I would stand up to them and just be like, that's not nice.
Mhm.
But then growing up with that mindset, like I thought that I was good. Like I was like, okay, I'm not being racist. But then when I started educating myself, there were a lot of things like when it came to white privilege that I was completely unaware of. And it took kind of having really hard conversations with my really close friends that we both loved each other a lot. So we were able to say really hard things to each other. And
Mhm.
it really opened my eyes because I think even within the LGBT community, like I can't really talk to straight conservative men. Like we don't have anything in common to talk about.
Yeah.
But within the LGBT community, my friend pointed out that I do have influence within the community, and there is the problem of racism. There is a problem of gay men having issues with transgender people to where like
Mhm.
the gay white man is pretty much the straight man in our community. So when it comes to like my privilege within our community, I am very privileged, and I have realized that I haven't really been using that privilege to do anything productive to be helpful to the people that I care about. And it really
Yeah.
took people saying, "You've got privilege," and I was just like, don't tell me I have privilege. I'm nice to everybody, but being nice to
Mhm.
people is different than creating the change to make it to where later on in the hopefully in our lifetime people of other minorities would feel that same privilege, which like you were saying, it seems very far-fetched and far away, but the more people talking about it, the more people that have those hard conversations, because they are hard, because
Mhm.
society taught me that I was not doing anything wrong. But society gives me the upper hand, and while other people are not given that same upper hand, and that it's my job. It's not the people down here's job. It's the people up here's job to bring themselves back. It's not you guys have to fight for something because people up here are the ones that have been given privileges, and you have to notice that. You have to realize that just walking through the world as a white man, I've been granted privileges that I was completely unaware of at the time.
And like my friend and I were recently talking about this. It was like one of the last few warm days we had a few weeks ago in Chicago, and she's a drag queen, a very, very well-known drag queen here. Very, skin, as a boy, skinny little black twink, basically. And we were just talking one day, and he was just like, "Do you think that we'd be invited to half these functions and events if we didn't say have a name or know each other or know certain people?" And I told him, I was like, "Absolutely not." I was like, "I know for a fact the reason why I get invited to half these parties, basically, is because I know someone who I'm very good friends with." And I know that like we were somewhere had a birthday party and we both got invited. And I said, I guarantee you that you got invited because you're someone that has, almost six figures in followers right now, and she's under a very famous drag queen's family as of recently now, who might have won a certain, season recently. But yeah, we were just saying like it wasn't for because she was saying, well, for you, I thought that you would have it easy because she's like tall, you're muscular, you're a male model, like you look good with everything with everyone. I said, well, also don't forget, I'm still black. They see my skin first. So, like I said, I mean, yes, like maybe people like you might think that I have everything in the world I need right now and be like, oh yeah, he can get to anything he wants to right now. But it's like I still see skin first. Like half the things I get invited to is because I have a friend that happens to be around me and goes, oh hey, by the way, we should go here because I got invited to this. And of course, I'm not going to turn out a fun time. I'm going to go to a party or a function or an event, but about 60% of the time, I'm usually not invited to those things. It's just because I happen to know someone, and when she gets invited, it's because she's got the name now, and she's part of a very famous family now, basically in drag. So it's kind of like, we're lucky on this spectrum, basically. But just because of that, it doesn't mean that we had that same privilege. Like, if we didn't know certain people, if we didn't have that certain name, it's like I guarantee we'd be just like everyone else, basically. So.
Yeah, I feel like that, like, honestly, like, when you think about that, it would be very frustrating to know that that's something that you have to kind of overcome on a regular basis. Like,
Mhm.
there's so many people, like, I was talking to one of my friends about just like my sister's mental health, and she said, well, at least she's not black. And at first, I was really offended by it because it was almost like she was discrediting the mental health. But after we really started talking about it, she's like, I deal with this type of stuff. And on top of like the things that are stressing you out, the things that you're dealing with, I have to also remember that there are things that I would fight so hard to do in this world and I still won't get it because unfortunately people do look at people's skin and like it it honestly takes like really hard conversations to start opening people's minds, and I think that those conversations are starting to be had. I think that what has to be done is we have to hold everyone accountable. Like I can't be sitting in a group of white people and hear someone say a racist comment and not call them out for it,
Hmm.
because that makes them think that it's okay. And you see it like in a room when there's no one of a minority status, they'll make a joke and kind of look around to make sure that like this person that it's pertaining to is not going to be in that room to be offended. And if you're in a moment where you're doing that, you should know, hey, this isn't okay. This isn't right.
Listen, if you got to look around a room and look behind your back, it's probably not worth saying. Just bear that in mind.
Yeah. I think
Like your
that,
mom always tell you, if you have that nice, it's nice to say, then don't say it at all.
yeah.
That's just the tea.
So, how, like, when it comes to having those types of conversations, like, I was telling my friends before, I think that it really starts in the education systems. I think that we really do have to start removing the whitewash that we've put on history. I think we really do have to start educating people. And I feel like there's like almost a taboo about talking about it, where like racism, where it comes to politics, religion, these types of things, like these are the things that they tell you not to talk about. But I think that those are
Hmm.
the things that need to be discussed. And I think that we need to start introducing things within the educational system where it's okay, what can we teach like a 6-year-old that is appropriate for a 6-year-old mind to understand this large issue?
Hmm.
Because I believe that, because people are saying that it's getting better, but I don't really think that it is, because people are trickling down their beliefs down to the youth. As much as social media is introducing us to more people, I think that what our parents say trickles down into our belief system as well. So the school system, I feel like, is the best place to start opening minds. Of course, we're going to get tons of pushback, especially like LGBT. I think that in my area, if someone brought a little children's book home where there's two boys uh, loving each other, we would get some
Mm,
pushback. But
I'm
how, like,
yeah, I see how that conversation is going to go down in the South.
so how would you like say that we're going to start kind of making those changes, having those hard conversations? Like, where do you think like people should start doing that?
I think honestly, it's one of those things where I think the parents and the older people need to kind of educate themselves more to educate the younger ones because I do think that when kids are at a certain age, they don't see color, they don't see race or sexuality or anything like that. They just see, oh, that's my friend, or oh, I don't like that kid because I couldn't play with this Hot Wheel car, or she didn't let me play with her Barbie doll. That's what I think they see at a younger age. But then as you get older, as we take after our parents, our older siblings who might be teenagers. I think it starts with people who are older and more mature. I think that they need to start educating themselves more and figuring things out before they can start teaching on the younger ones because in order for those kids to have that same mind perspective of loving everyone or I mean listen, we all have issues with people when it comes to certain things. I mean, it's going to happen, but it shouldn't be about, oh, because you're gay or because I'm black or because you're Asian or whatever. It should be like, you know what, you slept with my man, that's why I don't like you kind of situation. Then you got plenty of reasons to say I don't like you, by
Yeah.
all means. But I think it should start with the older people first. And I mean, I know it's hard when it comes to the grandparents and stuff like that, because once you're at a certain age, you're in that mindset. I can't really see someone who's in their 70s or 80s be like, let me just change everything that I've known my entire life. But I think that you can start with, like, say, parents and then go with people who are young adults to teenagers. I think we can start educating them in a sense somehow. Um, However that may be, I think we can get the older people to start changing and like figuring things out and learning more. Then the younger generation can see how we act and go, oh, like you're supposed to love one another. And like I said, have a legit reason to not like someone. Don't just look at them and go, I don't like the way you look. That's the reason why we have issues like that. That's how we started with, segregation back in the day. It's like, oh, you're a different color than me. I don't like you for that, and therefore you're less than I am, essentially. We should never have that kind of mindset with anyone. So, like I said, have legit reason to dislike someone and not a reason that, like, I took your parking spot in the Walmart. Let me sleep with your man or something and then dislike you for that.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to educating the older generations, that the challenge that you would come across, and I saw someone said, I'm 69 and I'm still changing. It is possible. That's awesome. My grandmother is also, her mind,
We stand for
she's
that.
85 and she's coming around to the LGBT stuff. So it
My
wouldn't
grandma,
really,
I thought was going to kill me when she found out I was gay. And I actually told her by accident because my papa knew that I was gay. And at the time, my ex and I had broken up. And so he was like, oh, he's like, how's that boy of yours doing? I was like, oh, we broke up. And my grandma was like, boy, what boy? And I remember just like, oh,
whoops.
like, well, why did you say that so loud? Because I mean, my family, we're not quiet people. My family's loud. And so like I told her what had happened. And of course, thankfully for her, her response was, "Do I need to kill this boy? Like, what's his address? Where does he live?" I was like, "Okay, Grandma, no. Like, I'm glad you accepted that." And now recently, now she's always like, we need to get you a husband. Go adopt a child and get me some grandchildren. I know you can't have the traditional way, so get me a grandchild somehow. Get a surrogate, adopt a baby. I'm like, Grandma, I can't even take care of myself right now, so there's no way I can handle a child. But she's coming around now, and she's 81 years old, I believe. So I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was impossible, but it's just in my mind, I highly doubt that someone of a certain age could change. But it's still possible, though. You never know.
I mean, I think that
So,
it really has to do with the people of influence in their lives. So, like,
mhm.
when it comes to our grandparents, of course, them having a gay child or grandchild opens their mind in that sense. If the generation, like we were saying before, live in a city versus a rural area, they're going to have the influence of the city around them. I definitely think that it would be challenging to start opening and educating older people that aren't in school anymore, we definitely would have to look to media's influence when it comes
Hmm.
to, and unfortunately, like the media is when it comes to every like huge establishment, it is run by white people. And that's one of the things that I learned was there isn't one that is not run by white people. And so it would require them to say, okay, this is something we really need to focus on. And you've seen a lot of really good films coming out that do kind of touch on that. I think that The Hidden Figures was an amazing one. I think that The Help kind of opens some doors there. And then you've got
Hmm.
like the Harriet Tubman that just came out. I do think that the more people that are working on it, that are Black, that understand the history, that have really dove in deep, and they're
Hmm.
actually wanting to get the like most accurate portrayal of what happened, I think that's
Yeah.
what's going to help, because we don't want to whitewash it or change the story to make it more entertaining. I think that it's important to get as authentic of a storyline as we can when we tell those types of stories.
Oh yeah, because like one of my favorite all-time movies that deals with like educating like older people is Remember the Titans. I mean, first of all, I love football, and then it takes place in Virginia. I think it takes place in Virginia, and it's one of those things where it's like these guys, and it wasn't just the kids; it was the adults as well that had to learn to work with each other and realize, hey, like what, like this is my partner in crime now, and like we're all gonna be family now, and the whole town in the movie at least. And I remember my godfather used to work for Disney for a while, and he actually met some of the people that were, they were, doing the story about, and they said like, no, that's kind of how it was basically. Like, we all had to learn to come together basically, and we had to educate ourselves essentially about, hey, this is not right, this is wrong actually. So I agree with that. I will say this, I'm not going to get too much into it, but there were some things about that Harry Tubman movie that I don't agree with that I just thought were just a little wonky. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, I was actually it's funny that you brought up Remembering the Titans, because I was talking to one of my friends about that movie, and she said she was very offended by that movie because the way that they portrayed uh, the main Black character, saying that like he was slower and that he only progressed and made his way because a white person helped him. And she said
Mm-hmm.
that she didn't really like that storyline because it still put the Black person underneath white people. And
Mm-hmm.
granted, it did show progress. It just, she felt like it was very white superior still. And I think that we do need to start introducing, I think that when it comes to films, when it comes to novels, we just really need to start getting people of influence in the communities out there. People need the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to tell their stories. And that's one of
And
the things that,
honestly, the person who I think is brilliant right now, who's a man of color, is Jordan Peele. Honestly, in my opinion, especially with like Get Out. I mean, like that could have been easily, like okay, white people take over a black guy and whatever, but they completely flipped it around to, oh no, like I'm smart and I'm going to get my revenge on every single one of you guys. And I love that they had. Oh, did you ever see the alternate ending ever?
mm-mm,
So the alternate ending, so the ending that they show in Get Out is when everyone's dead and the police car comes and it's his friend. But the actual alternate ending is to white cops find him, bloodied up, and they see everyone's dead. And they take him to prison and they're trying to question him, like, what's happened, what's going on. And the black character knew that if he were to talk and try to tell the truth, they weren't going to believe him anyways. And they actually were, and Jordan Peele was saying, I almost went with that ending, but then he said it felt too realistic. I wanted to give the hero a chance to, hey, guess what? There is happy ending. His friend found him, the one that was always suspicious of everything, and he survives and he lives happily ever after. He's like, but I felt that the other ending was just too realistic, that he was afraid he would get backlash for, oh, of course you would have it realistic. And then, of course, the black guy, goes to prison for life and he didn't do anything wrong. So, I really enjoy his kind of stuff. In fact, I'm really, really, really hoping they show Candyman soon because it takes place in my city, and I absolutely love the original. So,
yeah, those movies freaked me out a lot when I was little. So I
oh,
think
I
that,
love horror. I love horror. And I think what Jordan Peele does also amazingly well is the fact that he takes certain like songs that are like classic hip hop and R&B or whatever, and makes them to like a beautiful symphony almost like with the I Got Five on It from Us, and he turned it into almost like an orchestra like symphony, but then you still have the moments of hip hop in there. And in the Candyman trailer, he takes Destiny's Child "Say My Name" and turns it to like an operatic kind of style. So it's like, like you can do so much more than just make it okay, boom, 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 bam, bam, bam. Like, there's a lot more we can do with, our style essentially.
Yeah, most definitely. I have not heard that one from the Candyman yet, so I'll have to check that one out. But I
Go watch the trailer. Go watch the trailer and you'll see what I'm talking about.
perfect.
And then text me.
Perfect. I'll do that. I saw that my friend Natasha said that there's a new movie I would like to see. I think it's called The Good Lord Bird, and asked if we'd seen the previews. I have not seen the previews of that, so I don't know anything about that movie. Have you heard
Mm-mm.
that one? Natasha, you'll have to tell me about it because I have not heard about it. But yeah, I think that the more we start seeing that type of stuff, and like I've talked to people where we have talked about straight people playing LGBT roles, and
Mm-hmm.
how people have gotten upset about that. Uh, I think that bringing awareness to LGBT in any sense is a good thing. I
I agree.
think that,
I get why people could be upset, like the whole Brokeback Mountain when it was Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal. Like, I get it, but at the same time, though, it's like a movie like that in the 1990s would never have even been considered at all. And even still, it was like what early 2000s that came out. I mean, it was still like a very controversial film, but it still like swept the Oscars though. So that was in a sense kind of like like it may have been what we wanted specifically, but at least it was a slight battle that we won to a sense that became a little bit more accepting for us then at that time. So I say we need to take our battles that we can win at least, and then slowly keep evolving through stuff like that. Basically, that's just how I see it as. And some people might disagree with me on that, but I mean that's just how I view it as.
yeah, I'm the type of person that I try to find the positives in things, and I think any
Mhm.
forward movement for equality and equal rights, I think that that's a good thing. Yes, it would be great for the LGBT to be uh, like represented in as many places as possible. Just like I think that when it comes to like roles within movies, and when it doesn't really like when race isn't a thing, like the character isn't a historical character, um, whether they like, I think that we really do need to start introducing races of all backgrounds into film,
Mhm.
because there are tons of really talented actors and actresses from all different backgrounds that really aren't getting any spotlight because we are
Mhm.
cycling through the same white people that we could have easily replaced it with a very talented person from a different group of people, and it would have given that community a new role model and given that community some time in the spotlight. Because I think that the more we're doing that, the more the media is starting to ask, like, how does that like feel, how do you feel about this? And that's giving someone a chance to be someone's role model. Because I know growing up, like being gay, like there wasn't a lot of LGBT role models. A lot of the people that were gay, it wasn't said that they were gay. They were just like they had gay tendencies or gay like
Mhm.
mannerisms. But like I didn't have any gay role models growing up.
I don't know, and like I said, me being like I said, a black kid growing up, I always was told, oh, like if you're gay, you're going straight to hell. And of course, my parents would always be like, oh, like we can't ever have a sense gay. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna hide on away then. But I mean, it's funny to even see like about more diversity. I don't know if you've seen. I mean, like I said, I love horror films. It's my thing. And obviously, I'm sure you know that they're making Scream 5 officially now.
Mhm.
And so many debate about the cast that they have, and it's actually like a very, very diverse cast. It's like they had like two Latinos, a biracial guy, like a white girl, a white guy. There was like a couple of black people there on the cast. It was like a little bit of everything, which I was kind of like, oh, this isn't the typical. Okay, we have seven white people, then the one black person, then the one person that could be Latino. It's like they literally had like every ethnicity, and of course, obviously they're bringing back the original trio, Courtney, David, and Nev, because you can't do the film without them. But just look at like the new teenage cast now. I was like, this is really like, diverse. Like there's the sexy Latina, there's like the awkward, weird, creepy white guy. There's like the really pretty white girl, and there's like sassy black girl. It's like it's a little bit of everyone right now. So I was very impressed on the casting, and a lot of people were saying like, oh, this is such a diverse cast. And it's like, well, it's about time. Like horror shouldn't be about okay, the black guy's gonna die first, and then we're gonna kill the white people little by little, as it usually goes. It should be like okay, it should be a guessing game now. Like, oh, who's gonna go first now?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that a lot of times too in the past when there were people from the black community in films, they played that stereotype up so well. It was just like you
Mm-hmm.
knew exactly how that character was going to behave because they like had like a stereotype checklist that they went down, and it's just like
Well, it's like a movie. It's like that show Hollywood on Netflix. I don't know if you watched it or not, but they had the one girl who's the main black character, and her role was always like the sassy maid. And she had a line where she was like, "Oh, let me go get the doctor," and the guy was like, "No, no, no. What are you doing? You're supposed to be the sassy black woman. You're supposed to be all, oh heavens mercy, sir. Oh, I just don't know what to do." And that's how she was supposed to act. But she was like saying, "Well, I want to try a more serious approach on how I would act." And it's like, well, you're not paid to do that. You're paid to sound like this and to act like a country, bumpkin who doesn't know what she's doing. So it's kind of like, like I really loved how that show they kind of turned things around. Like, oh, like the gay guy's gonna be the main character is a straight guy, and like the black woman's going to be the lead role and not the white girl, basically. And we're gonna have interracial love instead of a white on white couple, and like the black girl's not going to be the just like the dumb maid sidekick, whatever, basically. So I really enjoyed that show a lot, and I really can't wait for season 2 to come out. Actually,
yeah, most definitely. I recently started watching like like the new Charmed series, which is very different. They brought LGBT right to the forefront with the lesbian couple in that, which I thought was really cool. And I've also been watching Scandal, which I absolutely love, and I love Kerry Washington and the role that they gave her because I think it gives her like this really powerful, and I think like that's a great role model, and it gives people. Of course, it's very dramatic. Like it's very dramatic because it's Scandal. It's a scandal in the White House,
mm-hmm.
but I think that like just seeing her like was amazing. And when it came to Charmed, I loved Charmed growing up. I used to watch that on the TV.
I never saw it. So yes, take my gay car away. I never saw it.
But now that they've introduced like lesbian couple into it, I was able to connect with it even more. And
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had people reach out to me from watching those types of things, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh!" And I liked it because they didn't overplay the fact that they were lesbian. They were just a normal couple. They did things that couples did. It wasn't like, oh, let's do this stereotypical lesbian couple, like have them cut their hair short, do this type of stuff. Like they were just girls, and they
Mm-hmm.
just happened to be a lesbian couple. And I
I
think
think the
that
new
that's
Spring Fire movie has a lesbian couple. Is what they said. Actually,
what was
I
that?
think the main character, I think the main character's sister and like one of the other main characters are they're supposed to be a lesbian couple actually. And I'm reading a comment right now, someone saying like, "Why they always make the white girls fall down while they're running from trouble?" Like, why? I agree. I completely agree. It's because they always wear those high heels. That's why. I fought on when I wear my heels all the time. I did that at drag performance. I wore my 6-inch heels and ran and fell.
Oh my gosh,
So that's
that's
why.
crazy. Yeah, it says I didn't have any LGBT models growing up, but I loved the original Charm. Yeah, I mean, I think that LGBT when we were younger, and even people who are older than us, like role models became like people that were just kind of going out there and doing something different, making change in the world, versus
Hmm.
people who are LGBT and making change. I think we found role models in people who went out there and fought the norm, and I think that that's kind of where it was before. Now we've got like people who have YouTube channels, people who are like going out in Hollywood. We've got tons of people coming out now. We've
Yeah.
got people in sports coming out, which I think is phenomenal because even in the country music genre, I think that's one of the places where being a man is something that's like you have to. That's like one
Mhm.
of the checkoffs for being a country music.
Well, like even Access is a very well-known country gay singer, which I'm actually good friends with him here in Chicago. because I know that he's launching his new swimsuit line. But he's someone that if I were to just walk in the streets and like listen to his music and just see him just walking around, I never would guess that he was gay at all. So it's like really awesome to see things like guys like him be like, "Hey, I am openly gay." And for me, like growing up, I actually never really watched much TV. My parents and my mom and dad were very more about focusing on school and sports basically. So for me, I really didn't have much time to kind of look at TV shows and be like, oh, do I identify with this person? So for me, it was kind of just like I never really had that until maybe until after college, honestly, when I actually started watching TV. But like I say, even then, I was doing a 4 a.m. workout, going to classes, going to another workout for 4 more hours, then going to my fraternity meeting, and then doing homework all night, and then I'm right back at it at 4 in the morning. I didn't really have much of like the college lifestyle of everything else like that until after my 5th year, I finally took another year to do some more studies. Then I finally had the chance to actually like explore things and be like, oh, okay, like now I get it. So I didn't really have that sense of like, do I identify with this person as a kid or as a teenager growing up? I kind of wish I had a chance to, experience that at least so that I could be like, see what the difference is now. But for me, it's like I never really watched much TV and I didn't even have video games growing up until I think the PS2 came out, which is showing how late it was when I finally got something.
Yeah, my family, because we lived in the country, they would send us outside. They're like, go play on the farm. We didn't do video games. My first real experience with it was my freshman year of college, and I would just like mash the controller, and that's all I could kind of do. So
Hmm.
I definitely understand that. But I mean, I think that the lifestyle that you had, like you were kind of going out there and being your own rock star, you don't necessarily have to have a role model. Like, I mean, your family sounds like they had a lot of structure for you to kind of guide you in life. And that's probably something that you're thankful for in a lot of
Oh,
senses.
absolutely. And they whooped my ass a lot too, so that, helped me learn discipline. So,
Yeah. And I mean, that's some people don't have that. And that will definitely help. I mean, as a life coach, like that's one of the things that I try to instill into people's life is structure. Cause I mean, that kind of helps you. And a lot of times people have so much structure in their life. And then when they graduate college, it's just like the world is yours, but they don't know how to create their own structure.
mhm.
So they just lose it and don't know what they're doing. But
I would say, I guess, if I had a role model, it would be my grandfather, because my grandfather came from absolutely nothing to being the only black man at his college, to where he was constantly picked on, to finally becoming a doctor, then got like his PhD in business, and then started creating his own companies, then became a surgeon, and then he started creating medical technologies. In fact, he's someone that helped enhance the ultrasound
wow.
because he worked in a lot of stuff with that, to creating his own medical pharmaceutical management consulting firm company, to owning businesses in Asia and Africa and Europe and everywhere in the United States. And he was always very positive about everything. He was always smiling. He always had a joke for everything. But he knew like when it was time to work, and but he wasn't afraid to like take care of people. So like I mean, like I said, I had a very blessed life, and my parents made good money, but he made really good money. But he was always very giving, and pretty much always taught me like, you know what? He's like, you never know what little gesture can help out with certain people. He's like, always be kind to everyone. He's like, always show love to everyone, and always smile. He's like, you never know how far who could have a really rough day, and sometimes all you have to do is just smile, and that can just make the whole difference in the world with someone.
Yeah, most definitely. It sounds like our grandparents were, or grandfather was very similar. Mine was also in the surgical field. He was actually one of the first doctors here in Virginia. He did his residency in New York City and moved down to Virginia. He was actually the first doctor here in Virginia to work with HIV patients.
Oh wow.
Him and my grandmother did a lot of conferences, and my granddad refused to wear like the hazmat suits because he said that it made people feel unhuman. And
Hmm.
at that time, they didn't know how HIV was transmitted. They didn't know that it was sexually transmitted. They didn't know that it was in the blood. So my granddad could have made one mistake and cut himself during a surgery and could have put himself at risk. But he was definitely someone that I looked up to, and he had the same mindset. Like He was like a really kind, caring person. He used to throw like street parties in his community and invite everyone in the like neighborhood to come because he believed in community. He was definitely a strong
Mhm.
believer in family. He definitely pushed that really hard here within our like family here in Virginia. And when I came out to him, he told me, like, I know that this is not a choice for you to be gay, but be aware that being vocal is your choice, and making that choice is going to put you on a very hard path that's going to be very different than if you chose to keep that to yourself. And he's like, but
Mhm.
that's your choice, and just know that your family is going to love and support you no matter what. So, and then I got the whole sex talk because he watched HIV patients. So he was very, very strict about scaring me to death of ever having sex with anybody. So I definitely appreciate what he did there for me. It definitely made coming out a lot easier. It made
Mhm.
accepting myself a little bit easier. Scared me to death of sexually transmitted stuff, but other than that, I was glad that I had a supportive family.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about anything else right now. Are we missing anything at the moment?
I think we're good. I really appreciate you doing this with me. I was super excited when you said yes. And I mean, we've just kind of gotten to know each other here in 2020 as well. So it's been,
Well, it was that damn quarantine app that started out cute and then it just it went south quickly. So I was like, I'm just gonna leave this group on Facebook because it's getting
oh God.
reckless now.
I think it started as a way to stay connected. And
Well, my friend started the damn group, and then I finally texted him one day. It was saying like, "What on earth is happening now?" I was like, "It was cute, and now it is just getting vulgar, and it is just becoming drama."
yeah.
So I was like, "I'm leaving the group." He's like, "I'm leaving the group too." So I was like, "Okay,
Yes.
we're on the same page."
I messaged him and I was like, okay, every single post I've ever done like is getting like a lot of negative. I was like, I'm deleting them all, and I left the group as well. So I mean, that's I honestly feel like that group grew so quickly that it almost became impossible. Like when it comes to politics in the United States, I think that's hard enough to control, and I think that group became its own like world. And
It, it
I
still
don't
is. My friend still shows me posts.
I don't think that he was ready for that type of thing. I know that he kind of started it as a way to keep his friends in the Chicago area like more connected, and it kind of just blew up. So it
It
served a
did.
purpose.
It did. It was fun at first. It was a good way for, like I said, you and I became friends that way. So, I mean, at least something came out of it.
Yeah, got to find the positives and all the negatives as well. So, but
Exactly.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. I hope everyone that's watching, I think just from reading the comments that people really enjoyed this, and I'll leave it on my profile for everybody to kind of just watch it and share it if they want. I think we had an awesome conversation. Hopefully, once this pandemic disappears, we can start traveling again. I know that Chicago is definitely on one of my lists. Just from being up there when I lived there, I do have friends as well in Chicago that I would love to see. I'd love to hang out with
I'm
you
like,
if you're there.
I'm going back to Africa. I'm going back to Africa and I'm going back to my agency and then modeling my ass off when I get back down there. And I'm going to Paris to model and I'm going back to London to model
Perfect. Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. I had trips to Iceland and Italy planned for this year, and those got canceled. So those are definitely on my. As soon as this stuff gets lifted, I am going to visit places. I'm done with being in this area right now.
hmm Well, then once you're in Chicago, then you got to hit me up immediately.
Perfect. And if I'm in Europe when you're there, let's do something there as well.
hmm
Awesome. Well, have a good night.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.